With Week 11 of the NFL season now in the rearview mirror, there are several teams this week that thought they had playoff ambitions, but they were slightly halted. Where some teams are looking at their playoff futures and wondering, why were we the favorites? And then there are other teams that are marching well above expectations and leaving many to wonder, has there been a changing of the guard?
Bruh.
These questions and more will be answered on this edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Dad! Don't do it! Woo! No way! Woo! 85! Crying out loud! You're making me, you're driving me nuts!
But behold...
Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on this edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Of course, you're gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo. And guys, I must tell you, it has been great watching this NFL season and seeing so many different teams and different players just starting to morph and grow into whom they are. It's really been amazing, and it's been an amazing season. As I said, we're seeing the changing of the guard, not the usual suspects on all cases. Let me just put it like that. But this year we've got some very unusual suspects in the mix, and now I think we may have a changing of the guard. But while we have a changing of the guard, we also must identify who the real effing men are. And how do you become one? We're all grown men out here, trying to survive that fourth quarter of life. We take hits, we grind, we work, we sweat, and unless you're built like a rhinoceros, your skin takes a beating as well. So let me put you on something that's become the official cream of this podcast. TF Man Whipped Tallow Cream from the good folks over at Luma Vita. That's Luma-Vita. Now, this ain't your girlfriend or your wife's lotion. This is stuff that is made from 100% grass-fed tallow. Beef tallow, that is. Yeah, you heard me right. Real tallow. The same stuff our grandfathers used before the world went soft. And everybody started smelling like a cupcake. TF Man is a rugged, clean, and straightforward. No chemicals you can't pronounce. No greasy mess. Just a whipped, ultra-rich cream that hits your skin like a linebacker. But in a good way. Dry elbows? Gone. Cracked hands after working in the cold? Fixed. Beard looking like you've been wrestling porcupines? Smooth. Even the ladies tend to borrow it. But don't say I didn't warn you. And the scent? Listen, if confidence, victory, and a perfectly thrown spiral had a baby, that baby would smell like TF Man. So if you want your skin to feel as legendary as your Sunday trash talk, as legendary as your Sunday trash talk, like me, just head on over to lumavita.com and grab yourself a jar of TF Man Whipped Cream Tallow. TF Man Whipped Tallow Cream. Your skin will thank you, your teammates will notice, and your lady might actually think you moisturize on purpose. TF Man, built for men who work hard, play hard, and refuse to smell like a coconut unicorn glitter. Again, that's Lumavitas. Again, that's Lumavitas.com. Again, that's Lumavita.com. Check out the QR code up above. Come on, fellas, go get it. And guys, while you at it, I must tell you, you need to go ahead while you go over at Lumavitas, go over there and check out their Christmas special. They got a gift basket for the ladies over there, special, and it's shipping free. The shipping is free, you guys. That's right. I got that straight ahead. The shipping is on LV. Look, you don't even have to pay us more than a C note. What kind of a deal is that, guys? That is a great deal. Make sure you go over there and place your order with and Lumavita.com. Go over there and check out the wonderful stuff they got. Because, gentlemen, if you don't want to smell like the effing man, let her know you think like the effing man by getting her this awesome basket so that she can smell like the woman of an effing man. Well, Gabbers, this was a very eventful week for so many teams. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of teams that are wondering if they're going to make it to the end. And I don't know if there are going to be many teams that are going to still be standing after all this. You know, even the contenders that we've looked at from previous seasons aren't holding up very well. They just are not. And now we're in a situation where we're really having to dig back and really start to analyze where we are as we get to the midway point into week 12. And questions have to be answered. And we're going to go into a couple of these games and really dive in because there are a couple of surprises, y'all. I mean, they really surprised me. And, of course, you guys know I have a little something on every week. So, guess what? You know, I was semi-disappointed in a couple of teams. You know, there were teams, you know, this is the National Football League. You know, last week was the Carolina Panthers. This week it's the Kansas City Chiefs and the, you know, Los Angeles Chargers. I don't want to get too deep into it because I haven't announced the games yet. But let us start with the Jets and the Patriots. First and foremost, I still don't think Justin Fields has been utilized correctly. I think ultimately, Aaron Glenn has made the decision to sit and let Taylor take over the reins. I think for their benefit, it's the right move. But however, as I've said many times before, Justin Fields has a unique skill set, much like Lamar Jackson. So when I see teams that say, oh, we're going to move in this direction because of you cannot use Justin Fields like a traditional quarterback. That's not his game. And I don't understand why this is so difficult for so many teams to understand. It's like speaking Greek to somebody and they don't even have a clue what I'm talking to you about. And it's just ridiculously exhausting in my opinion. And I really feel for Justin Fields because needless to say, he has not been utilized during his career. The Bears did not utilize him correctly. You'll get a lot of questions as to, or deflections, if you will, about how they utilized him. And look, at the end of it all, I am not a GM. I'm not of the Bears organization. They seem to have the right guy now in Caleb Williams. I think ultimately the Bears are the ones who, decided they were going to ruin this kid's career. But as I said, Justin Fields is a lot like Lamar Jackson. He needed somebody that was going to make an offense that was specifically for him. Nobody did that. And unfortunately, he's going to pay the price as a skilled, talented player whom is not going to realize his potential. So I will say this. Do I think Lamar Jackson owes the Baltimore Ravens a huge debt of gratitude? Absolutely, because they took the opportunity. And I will say he has made good on that deal. But you got to give John Harbaugh a ton of credit. But let's look at this game. New England 27, Jets 14. And somebody made a statement that I just absolutely have to agree with to a somewhat a degree. Drake May is getting a lot of credit for being pedestrian. Now, I will say this. Do I think he was totally pedestrian in this game? No, he was 25 of 34 for 281 yards and a touchdown. But then you also have to look at the totality of how really ineffective this offense for the Jets was in this game. And I mean, really, when you have an offense that you're really pretty confident that you're going to stave off, then really it makes things a lot easier. Now, I will say this. The Jets did show that there were some holes in this New England defense by running the ball for 140 yards on the ground. The real issue that I see here is that the passing game is just not getting it done. Look, the Jets can call it what they want. In my opinion, they are so caught up in attempting to keep this offense so pass heavy, not pass heavy on traditional terms, but you want to keep Justin Fields throwing the football as opposed to doing what he does best. Now, we did have 11 carries for 67 yards, but the reality of it is, why are we not seeing... Now, before I say this, I know a lot of you are going to say the read option has played out. No. It's a lot like when you see the Wildcat. When you see it a handful of times all year, it's going to be effective. I think ultimately there are too many times when we're not seeing read option heavy. This is where Colin Kaepernick made his money at when he was here. A lot of people forgot about Colin. But the reality of it is Justin Fields is that same type of animal. He's built bigger, and how you cannot see this dude as somebody that you can use. 6'3", 227 yards. The reality of it is the game plan is not being called to me, this reminds me a lot of Bryce Young with Dave Canales. I don't see the Jets really attempting to make a move to make him better. Breece Hall had 14 carries, 58 yards. And when you look at the totality of the average, why are you giving up on the run so fast? I mean, I looked at this game and I said, why? This is one of those games where you look at it and say, how come you gave up running the football? There ain't no way I'm giving up and I'm getting four yards of carry with Breece Hall and I'm getting 6 with Justin Fields. And then Davis carries the ball 2 times and averages 5.5, and then Isaiah Williams averages 4. I'm like, what are we doing here? I just don't know. I mean, in my heart of heart, I'm really feeling like Justin Fields has just been absolutely wasted. And yeah, I'm just at the point where, you know, I really feel for the kid, and I think his career, I think this is probably the end of the road because, needless to say, like life in the NFL, if you can't conform to what a coaching staff is doing, generally they don't need you or they don't want you. And that seems to be the sad reality of Justin Fields, and I really hate it for him. It's just a case of he's got a lot of talent, but nobody's willing to take the chance, especially now with him being 26 years old and being in the league 5 years. It's been an absolute waste. Thank you, Chicago. Thank you, the Jets. That's why you guys stay terrible franchises. I don't care what Chicago's doing this year. They did not do it justice by Justin Fields. And if anybody has anything to say about that, please let me know. Because it doesn't just take talent to be a great quarterback or be a great player, period, in any sport. It takes great coaching and an ability to find out what this person's strengths are and how you can utilize them on the field, on the gridiron, or on the basketball court. Any sport, you have to figure out how to make that work. Patriots, on the other hand, they do what they do. They've gotten away with not being able to stop the run for a little bit. They did stop it against the Carolina Panthers, but I think that was just a one-off. And needless to say, the Patriots are going to have to be more efficient against the run if they're going to be in competition. However, they do go to 9-2. When you look at how this football team has played, they do all the right things. Like we've seen many a times, their special teams is crisp. Their plays are crisp. And you look at penalties, they only had 2. When it relates to the Jets, they had 7. But I'm looking at this New York Jets team, and I'm just, wondering, when you lose Sauce Gardner and Williams in the middle, you're not totally sold out that this defense is not, anything other than just absolute horrendous. I mean, I'm not looking at them as a team that is absolutely horrendous. But, they're a mess is what they are. I mean, you look at this team, they stopped the run efficiently. 65 yards on the ground on 27 carries, an average of 2.4 yards, which is a step up. But then you look in the secondary, Stephon Diggs, 9 catches for 105 yards. Mac Hollins, the new arrival, 4 grabs for 64 yards. You just have to figure out how to get pressure. You have not figured out how to get pressure yet. You did get Jermaine Johnson on the board this week in sacks, and then you did a decent job. Well, Justin Fields did a decent job eluding pressure, as Christian Barmore and Elijah Ponder were the only sacks that the Patriots were able to get. But that was a different story the last couple of weeks. They've been all over the place. But ultimately, the Patriots just played this game not to lose. They didn't lose anybody in this game. I'm not mad at that. I think ultimately the Patriots felt like they had control of this game. And, for the most part, they did. I just think, I believe that the Patriots understood what the assignment was, and they just went out there and they handled the assignment. And needless to say, when you get out there and you handle the assignment, you come up with wins and you come up with their very few injuries. Then we look at the Sunday game overseas in Spain. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I'm going to be honest with you. This was one of those games that would have made you snooze. And I mean, this is definitely one that Roger Goodell was probably like, guys, come on. Y'all, we can't do any better than this. These people came here to see a game. They didn't come here to watch this kind of exhibition. But I can honestly tell you that Devon Achane is the back for this offense. And I think ultimately with the Dolphins, here they come. Rolling their way into possibly, I think I heard somebody say that they got a outside playoff shot, y'all. I couldn't believe it when they said it. I was like, huh? I did a Dave Chappelle, Lil Jon reference. Huh? What? I started, what he said. So you look at Tua, 171, but he was sacked 3 times. And of course, Washington's playing without its star quarterback, Jaden Daniels, as well as Terry McLaurin. Deebo Samuel's got to, really start getting the football. I think Mariota's doing a decent job trying to get him the ball. I didn't like the fact that the Commanders didn't really push the Chris Rodriguez, Marcus Mariota running the football tandem, because look here, you got Rodriguez averaging 5.3 yards a carry and Mariota averaging 12.3 on 4 carries. There ain't no way I'm not letting this dude tote the football. The Dolphins have struggled immensely running the football. And look, this is where you can look at the Commanders and say, hey, you lost the game. 33 carries, 172 yards, and you still had Mariota throw the ball 30 times. Ain't no way I'm doing that. Achane was able to have 120 on the ground. Ollie Gordon had 45 yards on the ground. And then Tua only threw it 20 times. And that's what was impressive to me, is that, what he was able to do with those throws. Achane had 45 yards in reception yards. Jalen Waddle, 52. But ultimately, the one thing that killed the Commanders in this game, and the one thing they could not afford to do, was turn the ball over. And they did it twice. So for them to be in this game, you could see where this the discrepancy here was. Now, I'm not saying Miami is a better, is a lesser team than Washington. I am saying, however, that Miami has beaten itself all season with turnovers, whereas Washington, same thing. And when you don't have Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin out there, you can't afford to make these kind of mistakes. Penalties were about average, 6 for 31 for the Commanders, 4 for 39. But then you really start to look at where this game went wrong for the Commanders. And reality of it was, when you look at this game and look how slow it started. I mean, we went into the half at 6-6. And you look at the missed opportunities. You had a missed field goal, and these were really slow moving. I mean, we had a 4-minute and an 8-minute drive going into the first quarter. And then we just had so many drives that were just, this was not a game that was full of drives, you guys. I mean, you think about the way most games go. You get anywhere from 13 to 15 drives. And now I'm not saying the second half didn't slow it down. The second half really slowed it down. And then you come into the fourth quarter where Miami ties a game up after a Commanders opening drive touchdown to start the third quarter, and then you get to seeing the way this game was really slowed down and won by the Commanders. If you thought about it, because the middle eights, they won. They scored 10 points. So realistically, when you look at this, the way this game played out, Miami was in a hole to start this third quarter. And ultimately, despite what the Commanders attempted to do and had really the momentum, in my opinion, Miami was still able to steal it back from in the fourth quarter. And what really killed them in this game was the fact that they had that long sustaining drive leading into the fourth quarter. And then they had a missed field goal after that turnover on downs. So that ain't good. And when you look at it as a whole, not to mention when you get Miami stopped on downs, or you get them stopped, then you muff the punt and give it right back to Miami. To me, that was ultimate. That was the ultimate there, because the reality of it is, you look at where, outside of that punt, Washington had scored on its previous two possessions, and really, in my opinion, had the momentum. And I honestly thought when that happened, and even though Miami didn't help their cause, they got the ball back and then turned it over on downs, then the Commanders missed arguably the go-ahead field goal, which you look at it and say, Washington had this game. But Washington is in a perfect situation where a lot of people would look at this and say they are the perfect team when it comes to ripping victory from the jaws, or ripping defeat from the jaws of victory. That's all you can say. Miami didn't do anything crazy, but they did manage to do a lot better jobs. I guess, I guess I'm having a hard time saying this, because ultimately it really wasn't nothing Miami did. It was just a lot of what the Commanders did not do. I mean, yardage-wise, it was even. Yardage-wise, Washington had the advantage. It was just these two turnovers. And then you could argue it was another one because turnover on downs. And needless to say, you cannot have those when you're already a underdog. And unfortunately now Miami has an open path to the playoffs. It's not much of a path, but they've got one. And probably the least talked about game throughout all of the media was the Carolina Panthers 30-27 victory over the Atlanta Falcons in overtime. Before we get into this game, we want to send out our thoughts and prayers to Michael Penix Jr. as well as Drake London. These guys suffered injuries. Michael Penix is deemed season ending, and we hope he can get back to a full recovery, as well as Drake London. His injury is not known. His status is not known. The rumor is he could be out several weeks, so we really don't know what his status is going to be going forward. But Kirk Cousins is assumed to be taking over that role and going to be the Falcons' starting quarterback going forward for the final 7 games of this campaign. Looking at this game, you look and you say, okay, the Panthers did a much better job on Bijan Robinson, because I think he was over 5 yards a carry in the last game. And then you look at Tyler Algier, a guy who had a monster game last week in Berlin. But this week, he only had 10 yards on 3 carries. I think a lot of that was because Bijan was feeling so good in this game, because early on, the Panthers had no answer for Bijan. He had 2 touchdowns, and the Panthers had such a huge problem trying to bring this guy down. And then in the second half, I don't know what it was about the Panthers, but I do know that Bijan didn't get nearly the number of carries in the second half as he did in the first. But for some reason, the Carolina Panthers just turned this thing on, because they were down 21-10 going into the half. But one thing that the Carolina Panthers did that I have always said is one of the more important items that most fans don't pay attention to, is they don't pay attention to the middle eights. And the reality of it is, the middle eights, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. When teams can win the middle eights, And what I mean by that is the Falcons got the football back with 25 seconds left and really didn't do anything. But the Panthers kicked the field goal with 25 seconds left, and then they got the kickoff on the opening in the third quarter. Then what kills you is this game could have gotten ugly. And I'm talking about this game could have gotten to a position where the Panthers not only scored 10 points, but 17 in the middle eights. Because the thing is, the Carolina Panthers scored under 3 minutes. And then they got the ball back and turned it over on downs with a 3-minute, 52-minute drive because of the fumble that the Falcons had on the ensuing kickoff. Realistically, if the Carolina Panthers had scored there, you would have been talking about a whole different ball game, because then you have a 23-21 or 24-21, depending on whether the Panthers would have went for 2. But instead, you have that turnover on downs. The Panthers get another opportunity after a Falcons punt, and they kick a field goal and make it 21-19. Then once again, after another Falcons punt, going into the fourth quarter, the Panthers have a chance, but they go 3 and out. Then the Falcons go 6 and out. Then the Panthers once again turn over on downs. The Falcons are able to kick a field goal after they get the football back, and then the Panthers are able to drive 9 plays, 1 minute and 35 seconds, in which many people thought this could have been the game, to score a touchdown. Then the Falcons, led by Kirk Cousins, is able to come in and drive the Falcons into a position to kick a game-time field goal. Then we go into overtime. The Panthers hold the Falcons to 3 and out. They get the football back. Bryce Young leads the Panthers on a 6-play, 60-yard drive in 3:35 to force a Panthers field goal and pick up their 6th win of the season. But I really felt like the middle eights was what really dictated this game, because ultimately you got 10 points in pretty much a 6-minute window. And you were very fortunate that you extend that 8-minute to about a 9 to 10-minute window. You give up 17 points when it looked like you were possibly in control of this game. And I think a lot of people would say that game shifted when you got that field goal late in the second quarter. And ultimately, if that's where you want to go, that's fine. You can go that way. I choose to believe that the shift took place right around the third quarter when Bryce came out and started to really lay out what he wanted to do in this game. A lot of people are going to say, well, that starts with the field goal. No, not necessarily. I mean, I get it. Bryce has done the 2-minute drives before. This ain't nothing new. But I liked what Dave Canellis had to say at the end of the game. It says he's entrusting Bryce with more, which is what Mr. CeeLo has been telling you guys for the longest has been the problem with Bryce. Canellis doesn't really trust Bryce and doesn't really trust his guys out there. But now it's looking like, okay, here we go. I think it's more along the lines of, I think he's been holding it. Now you're in a situation where let's let it rip. You're not going to get these kind of performances out of Rico Dowdle anymore. And it's like I tell any reporter, Dowdle looked good for a couple weeks because teams basically said, we ain't finna let Bryce Young blow up on us. But then Dowdle started blowing up. Now, all these naysayers, Dowdle, 19 carries, 45 yards, an average of 2.4. Chuba Hubbard, 4 carries, 21, 5.3. Shouldn't Chuba get the ball back now?
Outstanding. Excellent.
Just saying. Tanneroa McMillan, 8 catches, 130 yards, and 2 scores. Xavier Legette, 4 grabs, 83 yards, and a score. And they said he was a bust. Haters. Rico Dowdle had 5 grabs, 55 yards, and almost had a score. Tommy Tremble had the breakaway of the game, which was a 54-yarder, his own lone catch of the game, and there was some arguments that was a face mask. Depends. Jalen Coker, 4 catches, 52 yards. He was huge. He had the first third down conversion of the day for the Panthers because that wasn't a great throw. But Jalen Coker, being who he is, and he's done a great job getting back in order. Mitchell Evans had a big 25-yarder, and that's where I said many a times, the Panthers are going to be victorious. They have to get the tight ends involved and get somebody other than Tanneroa McMillan involved. They did. They did it to a T. Even Bryson Tremaine had a big grab. 2 for 17. Jatavian Sanders, 4 catches for 22 yards. And then Chuba Hubbard added that 1 for 7. 11 guys touching the football in the receiving corps. That's what you got to do. For the Falcons, as of now, you haven't seen a switch from their head coach. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm surprised. And not because I look for this, but I just look at how owners have been, and even in the college level, have been really pushing away coaches, because ultimately what they try to do is they want to be able to get a jump on getting the first hires, if you will, in that coach's cycle. We've already seen James Franklin fall to Virginia Tech in the collegiate levels. So, yeah, it would not surprise me if Raheem Morris stays, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they relieve him of his duties. But outside of that, I'm looking at the way Penix has been playing. He looks a lot like Bryce is right now. They're looking at their number one, which is Drake London, 7 for 119. Look, I get it. You have a reliable number one. That's great. However, this is scheming. When a quarterback is not sure of what he's seeing and he's consistently going to another guy, he's not sure of what he's seeing. He's confused about what he's seeing. That is coaching. You have to get your quarterback on the same page as your as your coordinator or your head coach, whoever's calling the plays. Play calls have to go through your quarterback. And what I mean by that, he has to be comfortable in what he's seeing. And right now he is not. That is not a good recipe, people. And so, Atlanta fans, this is where you need to get and make a statement. Stop sitting here blaming Kyle Pitts. Stop blaming anybody that's not making this team better when it rides on the quarterback. I've heard so many Atlanta podcasters making crime and excuses. It gets old. Put the blame where it needs to be. OC and head coach. Panthers go to 6-5. Falcons fall to 3-7. And now their starting quarterback is all but done for the season. Next, we've got a thriller that was just absolutely great. Bills 44, Buccaneers 32. Now, before we make a statement about the Bills, before we talk about the Bills and Buccaneers, yes, the Buccaneers have had their share of injuries, but what about the Panthers? They've got 3 linemen that have been on, 2 currently that are on IR. Well, I think Hunt's still on IR, or he's day-to-day. It's one of the 2. I think he's on the IR. Brady Christensen on injured reserve. Chandler Zavala just came back. You want to sit here and talk about injuries just to skill players? Listen, I get it. Skill players are important. But ask Cincinnati, skill players don't do you a bit of good if you cannot block. So I don't want to hear this, the Buccaneers have had more injuries than anybody. Stop it. Once again, Josh Allen just being Josh Allen. I mean, there ain't no getting around it. Josh Allen has just been absolutely phenomenal. Watching this game was just so much fun. And looking at Baker Mayfield really breaking down breaking down walls and really not caring who knows about it. He's showing us that Skip Bayless was right. And I think everybody needs to give Skip Bayless a lot of credit. I mean, look, if you can dislike the man if you want to, but you can't deny the guy was right. He was wrong about the team, but he was right about, Tampa Bay and Tampa Bay and San Francisco are the perfect examples of how if an organization is run correctly, any quarterback can make a comeback. I have nothing but respect for what what Shanahan and Dave Canellis did in Seattle, as well as what the Buccaneers were able to do. Of course, Canellis was the coach there when Baker Mayfield was able to have his rebirth. But you have to really appreciate, and I guess you could give Sean McVay some credit for Baker Mayfield's return as well. But you have to understand that a lot of teams aren't fit to groom quarterbacks. And that's where you have to understand where your place is in the National Football League. Do you need to go out and get a long-term project? Can you actually build on this project, or do you need to go get a project that's already made? Do you need to get one that's made? Because ultimately, there have been a lot of quarterbacks come into this league, and if they had gone somewhere else, they would have been a lot better off. Because there are some franchises that know how to build quarterbacks and some that don't. You look at this Buccaneers team, and I said this on this show, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I was saying, hey, yeah, man, they're great because they got Chris Godwin and then they got Mike Evans. Anybody could ball out with those guys. Ultimately, when you watch this team, and it's a great thing that this Tampa Bay Buccaneers football team grabbed Emeka Egbuka. Because honestly, I can tell you, they did not foresee these injuries, and this would be a tough situation if Egbuka had not made this team or was drafted by this team. But for the most part, Baker Mayfield was held in check. He threw for 173, but the running game once again was the big deal here. As Sean Tucker, Rachaad White both averaged over 5 yards a carry. Even Baker Mayfield averaged almost 8. Sterling Shepard had 1 rush for 7 yards. This is what I didn't understand. I understand that it was a 20-21 game, and the reality of it is, in my opinion, they still didn't run the ball enough. Baker Mayfield should have never thrown this ball 28 times. He just shouldn't have. And I mean, when you look at the interception that he threw, you got 2 interceptions from Josh Allen. To me, that's just... And realistically, you have to be more, I don't want to say opportunistic, but you have to be, I get it. You had a fumble. You had an interception thrown. That interception should have never happened because Baker should have never been throwing football. Not that much. Baker could have got away with throwing the ball less than 20 times the way y'all were running football. It's simple as that. And then when you get 2 turnovers from Josh Allen and then you get a fumble as well, no excuse. No excuse, ladies and gentlemen. This is one Todd Bowles and his offense are going to have to stick. Because, look, there ain't no way in the world I am about to let this team in their building get away with 3 turnovers. Now, listen, the fumble, maybe I can deal with. That interception should never happen. And I'm not blaming Baker, but he shouldn't have been in a position to throw the football in the first place. Not the way you were running the football. Not the way you were controlling things on the line of scrimmage. There's no way I'm going to allow that to happen. Not going to do it. And see, this is an Achilles heel that the Bills are going to have to deal with. They're going to have to figure something out here because they're still giving up yardage on the ground, which I did not understand. You run the ball 39 times for 200 yards on the ground. But then Josh Allen's doing his thing. He's got 317 yards, 3 touchdowns in the air, and 40 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Nothing else to be said. Tyrell Shavers had 4 receptions for 90 yards. James Cook, 3 for 66 and a touchdown. Cook only had 48 yards on the ground. How does a team only run 53 plays and put up 44 points on you? Yeah, I will say this. That defense has got to get better on the back end. And they've got to get some pressure. No sacks at all. At all. That's going to be a problem if they cannot get pressure on the quarterback. But hopefully the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to get some reinforcements. But as for now, the Buccaneers are half a game ahead of the Carolina Panthers. The Buffalo Bills are trying to find some way to catch the New England Patriots, whom I think they've got a bye week coming up real soon. But they're 2 games and a half ahead of the Buffalo Bills. They're going to have to stay winning because the one thing they don't want to have to do is go to Foxborough. That's a big no-no. They do not want to deal with that, that crowd. But ultimately, the Bills got to find a way to stop that run because if they can't stop that run, it's going to be trouble with the Patriots. In a game that I sat and I said to myself, okay, another game without C.J. Stroud. And they're going to be playing Thursday night without him as well. And they needed this one. Because now they get to 5-5 with a big one on deck Thursday night without their star player in the Buffalo Bills. But we'll talk more about that as we go. They needed this game because they're getting in the meat of their schedule as we speak. And they need to rack up all the wins they can. C.J. Stroud or no C.J. Stroud. Because when you watch this game, the one thing I looked at and I said, okay, Davis, you said you were going to be that dude. And this defense did its job, even though they were not able to force Cam Ward into any turnovers. To me, that was the huge key. And I thought that Tennessee did a great job of not being forced into turnovers. To me, that was masterful coaching, because needless to say, this was what kept you in it. You forced the Houston Texans to do something that they didn't want to do. And that's make Davis Mills beat you, because Woody Marks only had 44 on the ground on 18 carries. Although I thought Nick Chubb should have got more carries. He had 5.7 yards a tote. Nico Collins had a good game, 92 yards and a score. Jaden Higgins, 4 for 55. Dalton Schultz, 6 for 51. Xavier Hutchinson, 3 for 42. You can look at Cam Ward, 24 of 37, 194. You could tell that there's a lot of thinking that's going on in his head, in him being Cam Ward. I think he's not trusting what he's seeing. And then you got to think, now he's in a situation where, okay, I'm learning this system. I'm getting comfortable with it. Why? So I can learn a brand new one? And I'm not a big fan of that. I really am not. Especially no matter how bad a team looks, you understand you got a first-year quarterback. And a lot of the reason that you guys lost games wasn't just because the defense wasn't great. It was because your offense was giving the ball back to the other team. And it's not all on Cam Ward, but you got to understand you got growing pains. And the biggest thing I didn't understand with the Callahan era was, why did you not do more homework and understand what it is Cam Ward does well? We haven't seen a game where Cam Ward looked real good. To me, that's where Bobby Slowick excelled with C.J. Stroud. It wasn't that just Stroud was that good. It was Bobby Slowick knew and was willing to say, okay, let me put this into my repertoire for him to do. C.J. Stroud had a lot of stuff in his playbook that he actually liked to do and did at Ohio State. You're not seeing that with Cam Ward. And truthfully, it ain't going to get no better until somebody gets in there and says, okay, you need to find a guy who is willing to do what this kid likes and he's comfortable with. Because ultimately, he's your eyes and ears out there on your offense. That's ultimately what it boils down to. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. Until you see more teams, head coaches, and franchises say, I'm either going to link my quarterback to my head coach, or I'm going to link my quarterback to what my OC does. They got to go together. You can't have clashing systems. You can't have an option quarterback or a triple option quarterback go into a guy that runs the spread. Come on now. But Houston is able to skate through this game as Danielle Hunter once again had a sack and a half. Will Anderson added one. And this football team is just continuing to get better and better and better. Although this Houston team did not have an interception, which is, yeah. Hunter also added 3 other quarterback hits on the day. And when you continuously are one of the best defenses pass rushing and getting to the quarterback, it makes a world of difference when you're talking to offensive coordinators that understand the difference between guys who get sacks and guys who disrupt the passer. You got a lot of guys who disrupt the passer, but they can't get sacks, but then they're just as dangerous and disruptive as the guys who actually get home, in my opinion, because they cause a lot of bad throws and they cause a lot of chaos. But Tennessee falls to 1-9. The Texans go to 5-5 and will be featured on Thursday Night Football without C.J. Stroud, who was ruled out for the game today. Next, we got a game in which I must say I'm a little bit impressed with one J.J. McCarthy. Now, if he can just get it figured out with the first 2 quarters instead of waiting until the last 2. McCarthy was 16 of 32, 150, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. Justin Jefferson had 5 catches for 61 yards. T.J. Hockenson, 3 for 39. Jordan Addison, 2 for 20, and that great touchdown pass. Jalen Naylor, 1 for 16. I think ultimately what's got to happen is Minnesota's got to simplify the game a little bit. I mean, let's look at something. Aaron Jones had 16 carries for 70 yards, 4.4 yards. Jordan Mason, 6 carries, 45, 7.5. Why are you not running the ball more? Simple. I think if you look, they talk about all these analytics. Why do they not have a statistician up there telling them, hey, man, we need to run the ball? I know you got to have guys up in the stands that are checking off this play worked well, and you got your little plastic colored playbook, the flip, like the menu sheet. You check it off, that worked. Check, that worked. Check, that worked. Even Dave Canellis had alluded to it. Sometimes we may go back to a play. Look, I've heard many coaches say, look, if a play works brilliantly, I'll go back to it two or three times in a game. I'll either run it out of a different formation or I'll run it in the exact same way. But I'll run a play before it that's the exact opposite of what I'm running. Or it may be a play action out of that same formation to trick the defense and then run that play. But the thing that bothers me is when I look at what the Bears did. You had 21 carries with DeAndre Swift. Then you have Kyle Monaghy had 12 carries for 23. Glad they didn't look at him and have him tote the ball. But DeAndre Swift had 90 yards on the ground. Great. You got 21 carries out of him. As a team, they ran for 140. But why would Minnesota only run it 22 times and they get 115 yards and run for over 5 yards a carry as a team? And you haven't even thought about running J.J. McCarthy. What gives? Caleb Williams was 16 of 32, 193 yards, and no scores at all. But you sit and you look at this game and you say, what gives? Well, I must tell you, when you look at the time of possession, ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing you have to remember is if you got an offense that needs opportunities like like a bullets in a gun, every offensive possession is a bullet in a chamber. Same thing. If you got a bunch of bullets in there, that means you have a bunch of opportunities to hit the target. When you have fewer offensive opportunities, you don't have quite so many. The Bears controlled the clock immensely. 37 to 23. That is insane. Realistically, the Chicago Bears dominated this game based on field position as well as time of possession. They were efficient and effective when they had the football. 320 total yards to 265. Passing game, 180 to 150. Running game, 140 to 115. Yeah. But then Minnesota had 2 costly turnovers, 2 interceptions. And when you're able to do that and dominate the clock, well, let's break it down. 2 interceptions allows you to dominate the clock. And that's exactly what they did. So when we really break it down, the turnovers are what cost Minnesota. And listen, while Chicago's 7-3, Minnesota can scratch their heads wondering, how did we let this one slip? And while they're getting close, I must admit they're going to have to come up with a way to run J.J. McCarthy more. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. It's not like the opening week where the Bears are trying to figure it out. It seems like they've semi got it figured out, because here you are with Caleb Williams able to scramble 4 times for 26 yards and then throw for 193. And he really has a rapport with Rome Odunze. Now, this week didn't look nearly as chicken pockish. This week looked more chicken pockish than it did last week. Cole Kmet had 5 for 45. I almost forgot where he was. Colston Loveland had 3 for 48. Luther Burden III had 3 for 27. DJ Moore, once again, really not a factor. And like I said, I'll say it again, I really see him being elsewhere next season. But the Bears get the win and go to 7-3, as this was a real, I don't want to say defensive struggle, but it was not a very a pretty offensive showing by either squad. But yet and still, the Bears get the win are a surprise, not only in the NFC, but in the National Football League. Packers 27, Giants 20. All I'm going to say is, when you get a guy like Jameis Winston that has said on numerous occasions that he's balling out. I agree that he's a good ball player, but there are times when he just needs to just play. This is almost one of those situations. He did a lot of talking in this game, and unfortunately for him, he didn't throw any touchdowns, but he did run for one. He was 19 of 29, 201, was sacked twice. Tyrone Tracy had 88 yards on the ground. Isaiah Hodgins, Tyrone Tracy, and Theo Johnson were recipients of some pretty good Jameis Winston throws. But then you got Jordan Love on the other side, who seemingly is in a slump for some reason. I mean, it's like you can't get this game figured out. And honestly, it's perplexing. But he was 13 of 24, 2 touchdowns. The running game was efficient against this Giants team. You had a bunch of guys touch the football, from Jordan Love himself to Emmanuel Wilson. Josh Jacobs left this game, and the word is it's not good. He is seeking another opinion. We certainly hope that Jacobs is okay. But as the way this game looked, I mean, you're seeing some flashes of what this offense can be, but it's not completely out there. Christian Watson had a great grab in the end zone. He had 2 touchdown catches on the day. Good to see him back into rare form. As we saw the New York defense, Brian Burns once again is just absolutely on a tear this season. And yeah, he could arguably end up being Defensive Player of the Year. He's got 13 sacks on the season, and we're just over. Well, they're just over halfway. They've played 11 games. They're waiting on a bye. And Abdul Carter's been slow this year. But, you know, as with Brian Burns, he's been a very slow developing player. No need to panic, New York fans. I know y'all had a situation where somebody said he slept through practice or whatever. You know, I wouldn't see that as an issue. He hasn't had that problem in the past, and I don't see any reason why he have it again. And then you've got Michael Parsons, who ended up sacking Winston, sack and a half. He's got 8 on the season. But to me, it's going to have to be getting Jordan Love back in to that rhythm. I think ultimately there's a huge issue there. I don't know what it is, whether it's chemistry with his wide receivers or a lingering injury that he's got going on. But ultimately, the Packers got to get that situated because the season's coming up and it's coming fast. I think they're done with their bye, so this straight on through 7 weeks. As they go to 6-3-1, the Giants fall to 2-9. As there's not been an update on Jackson Dart. Then we got this chaos that was the Bengals and the Steelers. Steelers won the game 34-12, but in the saga that is Jalen Ramsey, who continuously cannot keep his mouth shut, and look, I'm going to say it like this. Do I mind a little trash talking? Absolutely not. But the reality of it is, you get to being a little gnat. I'm just gonna be honest. You ain't that dude you used to be. I'm just gonna call it what it is. And I don't condone anybody spitting on anybody. I can tell you right now, I would lose my mind. You spit on me, it's gonna get ugly. Yeah, I'd rather you take your glove and just, you know, like they used to do in the old Western days or those old British type movie type things where they'd slap you. I'd rather you do that. But you ain't spitting on me. But once again, Al Golden's defense of Cincinnati was not able to slow down Pittsburgh. But there is concern in Pittsburgh as Aaron Rodgers did have I think he was a partial fracture in his wrist. The medical team said something about that he was going to play, more than likely it was going to be wrapped up or something, but it is his left wrist. So Mason Rudolph came in relief, had 127 yards passing and a touchdown. But ultimately, it was the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals just couldn't get out of their own way. Noah Fant had a fumble, and Joe Flacco had an interception. And here's the issue that I have with the Bengals wholeheartedly. You had Chase Brown run for 99 yards, which is a 5.5 yards carry. Taj Brooks had a 5-yard carry. What in the heck are y'all doing? Look, I get it. You got Jamar Chase. I get it. You got Noah Fant. I get it. You got T. Higgins. But the reality of it is there's going to be some games they don't get the rock. And this is one of those games they shouldn't have got the rock. Look, Pittsburgh has not been good stopping the run. You had 105 yards on 22 carries. Take away Joe Flacco's -1. Guess what? You got 21 carries, 106 yards on the day. This is why when you have a bad team, you have a bad team. Decisions like this. Pittsburgh didn't even have to do anything. I'm just going to tell you, when you don't have to do anything, it makes your world a heck of a lot easier. When you don't have to make sound decisions with the football. Kyle Duggar had an intercept, 73-yard pick six. And when you really break it down and start looking at what the Steelers were able to do, they only had one sack, and that was Nick Herbig. For the most part, you kept the speedsters and the pass rushers of TJ Watt at bay. Why would you go from the simplest thing that we've known since childhood, run the football? Pittsburgh goes to 6-4. Bengals fall to 3-7 with a possible Joe Burrow sighting on the horizon. Don't ask me why. And arguably the game that I was telling y'all where disappointments and overachieving came into play, this shocked me. The Jaguars 35 and the Chargers 6. Now, of all the games I looked at, there were a couple games. I mean, there's a game that we're going to get to that I was actually surprised at. But when I saw this game and I saw that Justin Herbert threw for 81 yards and had an interception, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Herbert's hurt. They don't even have hardly any statistics to go over because you all know the offense goes through Justin Herbert. 10 of 18, 81 yards. This was just one of those games, and I just had to say, okay, this is an off one. This is an off one. I mean, this got to be jet lag. Ain't no way in the heck a Justin Herbert football team only scores 6 points. You look at the time of possession, 37:55 to 22:05. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not trying to disrespect Jacksonville, but there ain't no way in the world that Justin Herbert's team goes for 135 in total yardage. Not going to happen.com. But I look at it from this standpoint, it was bound to happen. I just didn't think it would be against Jacksonville. I think this is a classic case of the Chargers saying to themselves, okay, well, this is what we got to do. We got to get through this game, and then we got to face off against the Eagles. But you got the Raiders next. Yeah. I think they were looking 2 weeks ahead. They ain't no way. I don't want to discredit the Jaguars, but they really didn't have much either. Bashar Tootin had 74 yards on the ground. Travis Etienne, 73, had 2 touchdowns, 3 of them in combined. Trevor Lawrence also added a touchdown. LaQuint Allen got some carries and some dirty work after they scored 21 points in the second half to blow it open. It was 14-6 at the half, and then the Jags just proceeded to play good defense and continue to do what they did in the first half. Trayvon Walker had a sack, and Danny Strigo added a sack, as well as Josh Hines Allen, as well as Eric Armstead. And really, there was nothing else to report. Jacoby Myers had a couple grabs. But outside of that, it was basically the running game for the Jaguars and the defense that pushes them to 6-4 after their 35-6 win over the Chargers. Then we look at a game that I just felt for sure. This was a real toss-up. I'm not even going to sit here and tell you I had this one completely figured out. But I thought that Stafford's hot streak was going to cool down. But then I began to think to myself, okay, Sam Darnold is getting to the point of the season where he collapses. You know, remember that Minnesota collapse? So do I. And this was one. He threw for 279, but he threw 4 interceptions. And they still were in position to win this game. But ultimately, when you throw 4 interceptions, it's like, and realistically, when you throw 4 interceptions, you not only handicap your team immensely, but you got 4 drives that either end at an opportunity at points or they end with a good setup for the Rams. And in both cases, that's what you had. In all 4 cases, you had one. Stafford threw for 130. Kyron Williams, 91 yards on the ground. This is one of those games where if you're the Seattle Seahawks defense, it's like, come on, man. 4 turnovers. They did spot you one, but look at it. 135 on the ground, favor of Seattle. 279 passing in favor of Seattle. The one key that they lost, 4 turnovers. Listen, if they just take back one of those turnovers, that's all I'm saying. This Seattle defense is for real. That's all I'm gonna say. McDonald's got these boys balling. I'm telling you, this gonna be a tough team to deal with because everybody's looking at they were looking at the Rams as a Super Bowl favorite, and Seattle, if you get Sam Darnold not to turn the ball over, you got a game. You got a victory. And they faced them off. I think they face off with them. I think it's 2 games from the end of the season. But don't be surprised if you see this team in the playoffs. And their defense is going to be very, very good. And they're getting very young, especially Nicky Manrory. This guy, I love this kid. I can't wait to see his career go up. Next, we've got the 49ers that just absolutely torched the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know if they're at a position where they're just tanking or whether they're just trying to show some form of life. But, that Monday night game with Dallas seems like so long ago. But, nothing but respect for the Dallas Cowboy brother, Marshawn Nealon. But Jacoby Brissett, in a loss, broke the single game NFL completion mark at 47. Pretty impressive considering they only scored 22 points. He was 47 of 57, 10 incompletions, but 2 of them were interceptions. Not good. When you look at what the 49ers were able to do to Brissett to trip him up, Lenore had the interception and brought it back 64 yards, and needless to say, the route was on. I mean, I can't say the route was on. It was 15-10 at the half. 25-10 at the half. And honestly, it looked as though the 49ers could be doing much more damage than they were. Brock Purdy in his return, 200 yards and 3 scores. McCaffrey averaged 6.2 yards a carry on his way to 81 yards rushing and 2 scores, while adding 5 catches, 40 yards, and a 3rd touchdown. In classic Christian McCaffrey fashion. Meanwhile, you look at Michael Wilson, who had 15 catches, 185 yards. Trey McBride, 10 catches, 115, and a score. Nothing surprising. Greg Dort, 6 for 66 and a touchdown. So the receiving core for Arizona was very busy. Whereas when you look at how the Arizona Cardinals could not get the ball rolling in the running game. So this is where I say that the 49ers have issues, and especially with the Carolina Panthers on deck on Monday night. Jacoby Brissett threw for 452, and Bryce just got through throwing for 448 against the Falcons. They're going to have to get something figured out here if they're going to compete. Now, they're 7-4. The Panthers are 6-4, looking to come out there and really put something on somebody. And the reality of it is they really do not have much of a pass rush. You look at they only had 4 quarterback hits all night. Bryce Huff had 2 of them, and Davis had 2 of them. So you're not getting the type of pressure that you want. And they're trying to put pressure by blitzing. So, and you already know they don't like to blitz. So this is going to be an interesting matchup as the 49ers take out the Arizona Cardinals 41-22. And then we got a game that I was just scratching my head when I saw how close it was in the late stages. The Baltimore Ravens finished this game 23-16, but I was sitting there scratching my head like, What is going on here? Because this game was a 16-10 game for the longest time. And then all of a sudden the Ravens reeled off 2 touchdowns and field goals. And I was just sitting there wondering to myself, okay, what is going on here? And then everything that you can do if you're a Cleveland Browns fan is, how is it you can conjure up nothing? And I'm going to be honest with you, people can say what they want about Shedeur Sanders. I'm not a fan of Shedeur, but I can tell a guy who has not been getting the reps. You've basically been giving, Dylan Gabriel all the snaps, and fair. We're going to get to see what he can do this week when he faces off against arguably an okay defense in the Raiders. This is going to be a coin flip as far as who's going to win this game. But needless to say, when I look at this Cleveland team, you can really tell they have not been horribly invested in either of these quarterbacks. I mean, they just finally got invested in Dylan Gabriel. Now with the issue with Gabriel, possibly a concussion, now we're going to see what Shedeur Sanders can do. And I do think his mobility is going to be a key, but I think ultimately the reality of it is the coaching staff is not very good. Let's just keep it a buck. No matter what kind of players you have, they got 2 really good tight ends. And I just don't see what they're going to do. And this defense has done everything possible to keep this team relevant this year, led by Myles Garrett, who had 4 sacks in this game of Lamar Jackson. Jackson threw 2 interceptions. This defense can do no more. At some point, you're going to have to do something with this offense. Mike Hall added a sack in this game, and the reality of it is, you got to get something done. You can't run the ball. You can't throw the ball. At some point, you have to decide what part you going to play in making this team better. Baltimore, not really much to talk about. Baltimore 5-5. Cleveland 2-8. Baltimore slowly ascending back. I've said this again, you guys. They going to mess right around and they going to sneak right into the playoffs. And a team that is slowly descending in the Kansas City Chiefs as they fall to the Denver Broncos, who played an ugly game last week against the Raiders. And here they are playing another game. But once again, Bo Nix and Sean Payton able to get it done as they weren't able to run the football. Kansas City basically shutting it down as Nix was able to throw for 295. And a key drive to finish the game, Troy Franklin had 4 grabs, 84 yards. Cortland Sutton, Mr. Third Down, had 4 for 59. Yeah. Kelsey had 9 for 91 and became, I think it was the Kansas City Chiefs all-time leader. I think it was leader in receptions. Had a grab for a touchdown as well. Tyquan Thornton had a 61-yarder. Hollywood Brown, 4 for 40. Rashee Rice, 6 for 30. Xavier Worthy. All of these guys that are putting in, and it just ain't cutting it. As the Broncos now, whom are really stating, we're not going to let Patrick Mahomes go off. What I really liked about this game was they shut down everybody else and said, okay, if Travis Kelce's going to beat us, we're going to let the old man beat us. But then the other thing is on the other side is Kansas City said, we're going to take away the run. But then they didn't count on Bo Nix throwing for 295. And right now, like I said, Mahomes needs to spend more time working on his throws and stop complaining and trying to get bailed out. Because he tried that twice and the refs have gotten over that. Hey, Mahomes, play the game, stop whining. Broncos go to 9-2. The Chiefs find themselves 5-5. And on the outside, looking in. And once again, the Philadelphia Eagles are just figuring out ways to win no matter how ugly it is. Jared Goff and company, if you look at the statistics, you would say Detroit had to have won this game. There ain't no way they didn't win this game. Now, if you look at the statistics, you're going to say, absolutely. But then here's a statistic that you look at that is absolutely paramount to this type of game. Time of possession. And the Eagles lost it. I mean, excuse me, and the Lions lost it. Beg your pardon. 35-24. Now, I'm going to say it like this. Now, the Eagles have the perfect formula for how to win games. They don't have one. It varies week to week. And right now, they've been beating some of the top teams in the league ugly. They have been slowing it down, basically making them be patient. I love the way they're playing. I think ultimately when you get a team that likes to score points, you basically say in a nutshell, hey, we're going to force you to play our way. We're going to force you to be patient. We're going to force you to take what we give you. And they unfortunately couldn't do it. A.J. Brown had 7 for 49, and really there weren't a lot of other statistics throughout there. Jared Goff was 14 to 37. Horrible. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles were total no-shows. And that's not on them. That's on the simple fact that Philly's that good. I mean, you got to give so much credit to guys like Jalen Carter, Jalen Phillips, Zach Bond. These guys are that good. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., when are you going to admit? Jihad Campbell, these guys are that dude. But then we also got to give some credit to Detroit because it's not like they just went out there and ran up and down the field. Roy Lopez and Aiden Hutchinson had a half a sack, as well as Jalen Phillips and Nakobe Dean added sacks for the Eagles. But this was a defensive game. Cooper DeJean added a pick. But ultimately, the Eagles are rolling. They're playing great defense, and Detroit's got to figure out some way to break that down, and they've got to figure out some way to not give up 13 points in the first half. That's the only thing I know to say, because ultimately this was a game of a handful of plays. You could point to 40 carries, 148 yards for the Philadelphia rushing attack. I mean, but 3.7 yards is not bad. But Philly goes to 8-2, Lions fall to 6-4. And finally, the Monday night matchup as the Cowboys honored fallen teammate Marshawn Leland, who died tragically this past weekend after scoring a touchdown against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cowboys did a tribute to him early on, and the Raiders were good sports about following. They wore T-shirts, and the league also did a great job commemorating his memory as such. And Dak Prescott threw for 4 scores in this game. And honestly, when you watch this game, the Cowboys defense looked a lot better. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe Pete Carroll's a man out of time, because looking at the way this Raiders offense is going about their business, and yeah, this wasn't a good look at all. Now, they did get 17 first downs, and the penalties weren't a problem, but then you get in the red zone 3 times and only score 3 times, and then the Cowboys gain you in time of possession. Not exactly what you're looking for. And in a division where the Cowboys are still mathematically at an opportunity to get back in it, and still at a mathematic opportunity to get into the playoffs. Despite the fact that they've had their bye, and, I get it. This is a game where Dallas could conceivably they needed to win this one. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it, especially when you know that you've got the Eagles on your schedule this coming week. And even though it is the finale of the meetings between you, you do have matchups with the Chiefs and the Lions coming up, and arguably the Chargers and Vikings. So really, you don't have another. You've got to go for the next month with 2 really tough games, and they could really challenge you. Now, and you already got the talks from Rich Eisen talking about Lamb and Pickens, the best wide receiver NFL duo. Pump your brakes, pimping. You still got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins over there. So, please pump your brakes. You really can't go there and say that it was all about Pickens and Lamb. I get it. Pickens had 9 for 144 and a score. CeeDee Lamb 5 for 66 one. Rich, I referenced this when they first made the deal on my show. So you ain't telling us nothing we don't already know. Okay? It's a shame that the Cowboys took 10 games to realize this. George Pickens is one of the most talented young receivers in the game. The problem is this. Do less of that. Look, I get it, but you are a big dude. Let your play do your talking. The problem with receivers is they put more emphasis on talking. Look, you ain't Steve Smith. Steve Smith had the energy of the Energizer Bunny. Okay? You've got great hands. You need to focus on the game at hand, because what happens is you are like a child. You do not channel your emotions positively when you get into conflict. You get penalties. You get suspended. You get ejected. Steve Smith did not do that. You need to go to the school of Steve Smith, how you are able to get in your guy's head. Not get yourself out of the game. Great game here. 9 for 144, 1. Absolutely what everybody's been waiting on. You will be a fantasy major pickup this week. However, I wouldn't expect anybody to be thinking, okay, this is going to be a consistent theme, because it is not. Just go ahead and tell you, this is not going to be something consistent, because the reality of it is CeeDee Lamb only had 5 catches for 66 yards and a score. That's going to change. Just saying. So don't get your hopes up, peoples. Do not get your hopes up. The Raiders are still waiting to get unleash Ashton Jeanty. 6 carries, 7 yards. Brock Bowers, 7 catches, 72 yards. Trey Tucker, 4 grabs, 47 yards and a score. We see Tyler Lockett yet again. Jeanty had 6 catches for 27. We saw Michael Mayer get 3 catches for 13 yards. And I'm going to be honest with you, we have got to get where, if you're the Raiders, I don't know what it is going to take for Pete Carroll to understand that Brock Bowers needs to be your dude, and Ashton Jeanty needs to get the ball in different ways. Somewhat sort of like what the Cowboys were doing with Javonte Williams. 22 carries, 93 yards, 4.2 yards. You can't say anything about how bad the defense for the Raiders was. Yes, they gave up 33 points. I get that. But the reality of it is, it was how they gave it up. Look, this defense with Max Crosby and company, you can't just put this on them. I know a lot of people are going to say, who can you put it on? Well, you look at it, the time of possession. The Cowboys did a great job mixing up their passes and pass routes. You look at it, everybody just knew that CeeDee Lamb's going to be the guy. But you could see early on that this was going to be a George Pickens, or it had the potential to be a George Pickens night. I saw it immediately when he had that one ball that was thrown out of bounds. And I was just like, Dak, how you throw the ball out of bounds? Because he arguably should have had 2 touchdowns on the night. Then Pickens still caught the dang ball despite the fact it was out of bounds. But at some point you have to, as the Raiders, you have to, mix it up. Get it figured out. That seems to be the issue with the Raiders right now. They can't run the football. Their offensive line is not very good. And then on the back end, they're getting beat in their coverages are horrible. When you're playing cover one, you got to make sure you got the guys playing over the top on the right guy. The Cowboys seem to have the right play ran for every coverage that the Raiders ran. And Dak Prescott was eating it up, not with the exception of a couple of off-target throws, and then Pickens just made some really good plays using his speed. But as I said many times before, if Pickens could just get his head on straight, he'd be an elite wide receiver. He's teeter-totting on that number 2. That's why CeeDee Lamb is that dude. And unfortunately, I don't know if Jerry's going to have the money to pay him. So you're seeing a guy who, for all intents and purposes, you better you better get something for him. You better sign him and trade him, because ultimately, yeah, this ain't what you want to see. I'm just gonna be honest with you. This ain't what you want to see if you're the the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, ultimately, you need to get this guy signed, but realistically, what needs to happen is that this football team better win this year. They better get it together, because, I mean, they have a dynamic offense, but unfortunately, you're playing a defense that's not very good, and when you start playing the elite defenses, if you can get it figured out against these teams, you got two dynamic wideouts. If you can just block up front and then get some semblance of a defense, you might have a shot. As for the Raiders, you had some good. You had 17 first downs, 3 of 12 on third down. You did have 236 yards in total yardage. You only turned it over once, but however, you just could not get the ball to Brock Bowers enough. You got to the end zone 3 times. You only scored once. Not good. Not good. But the Raiders fall to 2-8. The Cowboys go to 4-5-1 and hope that they can climb back into the playoff picture and make some noise with their dynamic duo of wide receivers. But that's going to do it for us on this edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style, the roundup edition of week number 11. Make sure that you guys go to my Facebook of Gridiron Gab Pro Style and the group as well. Make sure you join and add us as a friend. Make sure if you have comments, and if you're a first-time subscriber, make sure you put your name down in the comments. And if you have any disagreements with what I have to say, or you have any critiques on what I have to say, please do so. I always love the conversation. If you love the content, please comment. But make sure you click the bell notification, as well as hit the like and subscribe button, so you can get all of my shows as they drop. Finally, make sure you go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo and get me checked out, and keep up with all of my shenanigans that I'll be caught up in as the season draws near a close. Make sure you go by Luma Vita and check out the website, and make sure you get the QR code so you can get that 15 or 20% off. Now, make sure remember, you can't combine these offers. It's either the 20 or the 15. But until the next time, you guys, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.
But behold, there is a warm breeze that comes from the west. The blazing sounds of victory fuel their everlasting quest. It is a call to arms, for they are here, an army that has the will to challenge and the will to dare.